June 9th, Parks Commission meeting. And the meeting is being recorded for the purposes of open meeting law. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess the main topic is what is the next step, I guess, for the record. So John Dudley has resigned his position on the commission. I think did he talk to you and explain to?
He did. He called
Yeah.
me and gave me, he
Too much potential conflict with the restructuring.
Yeah, that was it. Because I thought maybe he was just way too busy, and he said no, it was all this potential conflict of interest because again, you guys see each other all the time, and so I'm kind of on the fence. I don't know if we want to, if somebody else might be interested, or if we just stick with the two of us for now, because this individual, if they do join, would be for a year or for 2 years. They would finish his term, or does he only have one term left?
The way it would work, because we did this with water one time,
Yeah,
they would be appointed just to finish out this year, and then in May there'd be 2 seats up for election instead of 1.
Okay.
I mean, we could, so like if there was a special election or like a government election in the fall, we could put this on the ballot like in November. But
yeah,
there's not.
I wouldn't bother.
I think.
I mean, I
don't know if.
Down.
Yeah, I mean the risk is if there's a potential thing that, I mean, there's a thing with ethics called the rule of necessity where there's a potential conflict, but we might have to vote on something anyway because there's only 2 of us.
Right.
But it's not like we're making multi-million-dollar contracts here. I think we're pretty transparent about what's being done and why it's being done.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm thinking, to some extent, I almost want, instead of, I don't know if we would, be involved in convincing anybody to join, but that if there's no one really asking, I don't know, did Dave Allaire, I know Dave really well, but he's never said a word to me about any interest. So
yeah, no, somebody has suggested it to me. I don't know if he's at all interested. I mean,
Oh, okay.
Definitely we should try and recruit somebody to run for next year.
Yeah.
And I think, in my case, so I'm up and I probably should make a decision about whether it makes sense for me to run again. It is a little bit of a gray area where, the more we structure things, it might make sense. I only ran because nobody was interested.
Honestly, I was very surprised that John could be on both because to me, it felt like, and obviously it was all legal and everybody said it was fine, but it seemed at that point, the conflict of interest seemed high. I mean, the fact that his role with the highway and the potential. Now, of course, I think it's all relative to what people, people are finding that. I mean, as you said, we're extremely transparent and everything. None of us are getting any kind of. We don't have access to any. Like I don't have access to money. I don't have access to any of that kind of stuff. So, and I'm not, and if I did, for example, if I did, like with somebody I knew that wanted to, get involved with the beach, I would follow the protocol that, with the ethics and all that. So, I'm very much on the fence of trying to get somebody in now. I feel like a lot is in place. I think now it's kind of moving forward with what has been put into place. And then, and I think if somebody in, say, the fall that says to us, I'm interested, all they do is send a letter in, right? There's no like time frame for this, right?
Yeah, let me double check. I'm pretty sure, like you said, we could wait, and then if somebody really wants to get involved before the May election, they could do this joint appointment thing in the fall too. I don't think there's a timeline on it.
That would be my preference. I can tell you honestly, and I don't think this is a conflict at all but Gwen's husband Adam is very interested in joining the parks, but he's not a Mendon resident yet. They're going to be moving into the home. Did you know this, that they're moving into Dougie Coburn and Mo Coburn's home on near where all the on Millville?
That's good.
Yeah, June 20th. That's the closing date. So they'll be officially. Gwen and the kids are official residents of Mendon, but but Adam has been living in Bellingham, and he'll become an official. But he said he's very interested, but he's not a resident yet.
Yeah, well, that'd be interesting to wait and see, because like you said, I think things have been set in motion. We're in good shape, get everything up and running. And really the big thing is, wait for this restructuring to occur. And then hopefully Parks, we'll have a lot more time to pursue some things and planning because we're not stuck mowing lawns all the time.
Yeah.
Where we can work towards the next step in terms of programming and things.
I agree. I absolutely agree. And I think that would be, again, my preference, that we just stick with the two of us and then we see what happens, We don't know of anybody. And if there is, like I said, the only person that I heard from was Adam, and he still, had a week or so before he's an official resident. And then we see what happens from there. I'm not even sure he will be. Once he gets going with the house, he might feel like it's just too much. But, personally, I tell people, I don't think it's a ton of work. I think, we're very flexible. We don't have, we're not like meeting every, whatever night at a certain time. We really can flex when we meet, as long as we, give the 48-hour notice and all that. So, and I really, really like that, especially being retired. It works out perfectly for me. So.
Well, right. It works out because then I don't have to go to night meetings. So I think, for the few times we've had to meet with people, we do meet at night, when we needed to have discussions. But I think, hopefully, well, I'll send an email and just clarify. I think they could do this appointment at any time. I don't think there's a limit on it. I think, like you said, there's not too much. It's just, I did start putting together kind of a draft policy for the lights to try and figure it out, but I need to do more research on what other towns charge.
Yeah, right. That could get it could get used a lot. I think people are going to get used to it, and then there will be those opportunities. And even if it's that the real big one is Rock the Block, but all the other programs may not be able to get a lot figured out now. They probably have all their summer all sorted out, but I bet you next spring we're going to see a lot of requests for usage.
It sounds like the lights would let them double up on games, so you could do 2 games in a row, which then could potentially. I had a chat with somebody from baseball, I think, about this. That would maybe free up time where they could, there's outside groups that I think would come in and pay big money to use these fields and these lights. And if we could have, one day a week that's just free and clear, there might be, that's what I was saying, an opportunity to make money off the for-profit users. That way we don't have to charge the non-profit users. Because it looks like we're looking at about $4.50 an hour to run these lights on those ball fields. So I think we're going to have to decide, we're not going to be able to eat those costs forever.
Right.
And I think that's part of what I'm trying to figure out with them. And same with like the basketball courts. And there's different lighting levels, but do we just leave the lights on? Because we don't have that on-demand system like we used to.
Yeah, right.
So I don't know how all that will kind of work out. I think in the interim, I think we would just schedule lights for the summer, the rest of the summer season, and then figure out something going into the fall.
Yep.
And have a more formal policy. The other thing, I don't know if we want to vote on it now. We got the final invoice for the lighting project.
Yep.
So it's $30,000. Let me just find the email Jeremy sent. There's some punch list items that they did not do.
Sorry, go ahead.
So, Jeremy reached out to them and they agreed to reduce the final invoice by $1,600 in exchange for the damages and the issue that Highway was able to resolve.
But that was it was only $1,600?
What they ended up saying, the total cost from John was $2,100. And Jeremy says that I understand our labor inputs may be different than yours, and perhaps we did some work that you wouldn't have done. I propose that Island Lighting cover 75% of the costs that Mendon spent.
Okay.
Because John, they went and filled in everything perfectly when really the major issue was the spot in the softball field that was in the actual playing area of the field.
Yep.
That, where they drove across the field.
Yeah.
Some of
That's
the other
fine.
stuff, unfortunately, was known to us. They were supposed to install
Yeah.
outlets on the base of all the poles, and that's in the RFP.
Yeah.
I did
Yep.
send that back to him that we need that completed. We need a set of
Yep.
as-built plans. And then the other issue, which I just discovered today, there's a whole pile of like waste concrete from the footings that they left that they need to get rid of.
Yeah. Right.
So I don't know if we want to vote on this contingent on those items or if you want to wait. And we probably need to vote to accept the project, which we probably don't necessarily want to do. So maybe we do just need to have another meeting. We have until July 1, but we got a bunch of paperwork to file with the state for our grant.
Okay.
So I guess that's where that is.
Yeah, whatever you recommend that we
know.
vote on today, that's fine with me, and might as well get that over with. If we truly can vote on some of that to relate to the lights.
I would make a motion to approve the third invoice pending the resolution of all punch list items. So
okay,
it would be that minus the amount they agreed to. At least then we can get that submitted. So I guess
so so this is Burn, so I'm stepping down and I'm seconding and I guess all in favor, and Burn, aye.
Dan, aye. So that at least covers that, and then we'll have to meet again to formally. I think probably should take a vote to accept everything because I think we got to send a letter. And then I don't know if you have to run. That's pretty much the big stuff for now. I got to get our minutes caught up still. That's a whole project. And then, according to John, they did interviews. They made somebody an offer for the grounds position. I don't know who, and I don't want to say too much in case stuff isn't public yet, but it sounds like they were very happy with the candidate they picked.
Oh, good.
They found somebody that has decent experience. And it's not an internal candidate.
Somebody else. Oh, no, huh?
No, I guess.
Maybe that's good. Maybe it's better for everybody, that it be somebody that's kind of a new, fresh start, so to speak. So.
Yeah, they didn't apply for the position, apparently.
Oh, really?
But
was
I guess
it not enough money?
I'm guessing maybe that was the concern, but or they, maybe they were happy with what they do.
So remind me, does that mean that this person will start overseeing the maintenance guys as of like July? Well, whenever they're hired, but so that'll be their role, right? They'll be going with these guys and taking care of all the landscaping needs, but oversee that crew as of.
Right. I think John
official,
said
start
the
date.
second week in July was the date they came up with. But so they'd be full time. They're going to run that crew. I had a conversation with Brian, and I'm going to send them an email kind of explaining what's going on and say something to the effect of, it's not a slight on their performance. It's just more a major step up for the department as a whole that we need to staff this
absolutely
fully.
This is a huge step. Huge. I mean, if I talk to people and they say, "What do you guys manage?" They're kind of a little bit surprised the amount of property and land that these guys have to manage, in the fields and et cetera, et cetera. So to have somebody making sure that all goes smooth, and then during the off, when these kids are done, I don't know if Brian wants, what his. I feel bad that he doesn't have that job in place, but maybe this is good. That'll force him to keep looking.
Yeah. Well, I think it's just we're drowning, and we really should be focusing more on programming and doing stuff in the fall, and like we need to put together a capital plan for all our properties, and then on the facility side, I mean, we're just running around like crazy. So to have all the mowing handled, so a mower breaks, they can call John, and that department can fix it, and we can just say, "Hey, John, we need this fixed," and that's the end of our. We don't have to plan it out and figure it out. It makes a lot of sense. Leverage. I think.
I'm sure
Yeah.
20 years from now, it'll be just a standard, not even probably in a couple of years, it'll just be, we finally gotten to a point where we should be. I mean, kind of with the lights too, it's just we're doing what should
Yeah.
be done. I don't know about should have been done, but should be done. I mean, it's relative, so we're at a point we should be at. So that'll be really nice.
Yeah. Like just progress.
Looking forward
I think.
to it.
I mean, the camp is
Yeah, exactly.
Like, so
Yep.
that's huge.
Yep.
I think, the next
Yep.
phase, we slowly growing some of the events
that.
at the beach.
Yeah.
That I had no idea. And all of a sudden I'm looking, there's like entire weeks that are completely full.
Oh, that's something, huh? I think, it's kind of what happens with us with the daycare too, is a lot of parents have to work. They can't take the summer off like they used to. I think that's what Gwen's thinking, is she had some medical procedure done the other day. So with my father passing away, she said, she's going to give you a call, but it was just overwhelming to her. So I think I talked to her yesterday. She said, I'm just telling him I'm going to give him a call. I will be giving him a call. So she had this, after the funeral, she said, you know what? She kind of got this real overwhelming feeling that she'd like to carry on my father's legacy, because I've been encouraging her to apply for the position for a year, knowing, they'd be amending, and she just said, no. And then after that, she said, you know what, I think I'm like, you're crazy not to take it. I said, you just talk to Dan. I said, talk to Dan and see what you guys come up with, but at least talk to Dan. So,
yeah, like if
it
was
nice.
Interested, so, I think having somebody there to kind of oversee just the lessons.
Yeah.
That's like, that would be a big step up, and, and potentially somebody that's, like with the previous person too, that's an educator. I think that's a piece of the puzzle that is missing currently. That would be really helpful.
Right.
And then, from there, potentially grow into other things and see where we get. It doesn't necessarily need to be a full-time thing. I think we've hired a bunch of guards. Right. But it'd be nice to, I guess, for lack of a better term, I don't mean to hurt feelings, but it'd be nice to have another adult down there.
I hear you. I agree completely. I mean, that's how I grew up. That's exactly when you had my father, which is basically what we have with the camp, because he was that young. My father was probably in his 20s when he was down there, but he was, working in the school system, so he had the experience with youth. You know what I mean? And then I think he had a lot of ideas. And I actually couldn't believe it when I read that article that they had over 500 kids in the swimming lessons. But everybody did it. Everybody went, and as I mentioned, if you saw my Facebook post, nobody had pools back then. Very, very few. Like I remember growing up, the house that Aram's in, the people that lived in that home had a pool, and you thought they were just really, really rich, because they had a pool. And everybody went, the beach was packed in the day, we just had it. And then my father had all these activities. And so it drew people, and kids would literally, as I've probably said a million times, literally show up and they would just spend the day at the beach. We certainly don't want that now, but that's the way it was. They take their bikes, go to the beach, and then he had all these activities for them. And then they had arts and crafts. They had all kinds of things going on. But at the very least, we had adults that oversaw, because that's why I didn't like being a lifeguard, because it was so strict about, you had to move around. You couldn't be sitting there talking to somebody. You had to clean, if it was downtime. And these kids, it's just not part of these kids in there. It would have been in my mind either, but it was just something I was supposed to do. I didn't like doing it, but so I think it would bring in a really important element to that, to the beach having, and then something I would hope whoever it might be, if it's her or whoever, would come back year after year after year, and really, really build that up.
Yeah,
because it looks beautiful. The beach looks beautiful.
The past, I mean, and where we had somebody and then they don't stick around, and we've had Alan and Jen now for a while. And the beach, and again, sorry.
Well, no, that's really you. I mean, you're the one that very worked really hard for Alan and Jen to some extent. But I remember with Alan, I probably wouldn't have wanted to pay him the extra money. I probably wouldn't at the time wanted to let his children go to. But look at where we're at, and that was you fighting for him in your own way. I mean, it wasn't anything that we argued about, but you really worked hard for him. And now look at what we have with that level of consistency. I mean, it's incredible. And that's what it used to be, because all the teachers used to go work at these summer programs, and now a lot of them don't anymore. They don't want to. They maybe don't need to, but that standard practice was why we had such great success, because you just kind of knew what to expect. And with Alan, it's just that reputation of the program that you guys have created. I have had nothing to do with it, is outstanding. And so the kids want to go. You guys have done a phenomenal job to build that program to where it's at. Because you remember, I mean, you might have been in a snack shack at the time, but we had
like 5
nobody.
kids.
Yeah, we had nobody. Just they weren't going. And then I think Alan came along, and look at, he's just major. I mean, I'm hope he and they feel very proud of themselves, because that's what you guys did. You working with them and what you given them for support for to do the job, and it's incredibly successful.
Thanks. Yeah, I think I agree. I think we've really built this up quite a bit, and then it'd be nice to see the beach, some of that come back, or find things that mesh with the current generation. If there's activities we should be running, or stuff to
I hear a
provide
lot of people
opportunities for
talk
some of
about
these kids.
a lot of people talk about the bands. I do think that at some point, maybe to even revisit the ability for people to grab a beer or two. I think now that we have that looking so beautiful and stuff, I think it's going to be weather dependent, but I think it's going to be a very successful year with people going to the camp. I think the boat race is iconic now. That's going to be packed.
I do have an update on alcohol. I forgot about that. So I think the way to do it is to work with a vendor.
Yep.
And I got some information from somebody on how some other towns do it. So I think I've been talking to Black Harp, actually.
Yep.
If you're familiar with her, but we need to advertise and come up with some sort of, we charge a fee, like maybe it's $1 per customer. That way anybody has the opportunity to come in as a vendor, and then we select a vendor. And if she ends up applying for it, and then she has the insurance, they get the license, so they take on the risk. They're trained. That's the way to do it. And I think if we can do it for these 3 concerts, I just got to confirm with Jeremy the procurement process and make sure we do it correctly.
Right. Yeah.
But no, I do think that was a little bit of a draw. And then see, like the crafts programs or some sort. I thought of like, could we do like stuff for, the tween age group? I don't know, video game nights or something. I don't know what would attract some of those people to the beach.
Yeah, well, that's the value of having a beach director that's sort of very focused on that, where you've got to think of a million different things, and I can get a little bit creative, but I don't necessarily know how much that impacts what we you or any of the employees. But you have somebody down there that can say, hey, let's try this, let's try that, and and I think it would be when you look at. Like I've always said, I mean, the night of fireworks, the fireworks display at that beach is unbelievable. I mean, on the lake is incredible. And I thought that would kind of, I thought I had heard a few of the people had moved, but I think there's still people down there, like the Mortons, I think, were doing it. And I think the guy that was doing it, I'm not sure he would do it this year, but I think they would have people down there that would do it that grew up on the lake, So I think, the different events that we could have would be pretty good, pretty cool. So, but having somebody that's saying, hey, this is mine, kind of own it and say, let's look at some ideas and, take it slow this year and, build up, but there's already some things in place, but it would be awesome, be great.
Yeah, definitely. All right. Well, I think we'll see
Yeah.
what we
All
get
right.
from that. I don't know if there's anything else super quick. I mean, everything's in fairly good shape. We're hopefully setting up orientation. I started cleaning the
Yep.
beach. I mean, the beach does need some more landscape work, which I think, again, is something we can work with John on in the fall. I'd like to try and put
Yeah.
irrigation down there.
Yep.
Like there's
Yep.
still some spot. Actually, I ran into Tom Bellin the other night when he was pulling a boat out of the water. So then he got a private tour of the lights.
Yeah.
But we were talking about the beach and saying, like, I think we need to do some amendments to the soil. It's a little rocky and it's washed out in some spots,
Yeah.
but it's definitely much better than it was.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Huge. Yeah. That's awesome. The only other question I have for you is you will report back to the select board about our decision on not like sticking with the two, because he gave us 3 options, right?
Yeah,
And so
I
we're
drafted it. I'm gonna email them and just confirm that
okay.
there's no timeline, but I'll leave you on the email.
Okay. So
Just
just so you're
read it.
aware, because I think it's important that he's aware, but and he sees it, but Jeremy, I had let them know. I don't know if they responded to everybody. I wasn't sure, but he just said, he was very nice, offered his condolences for my father and said, make sure you do this in a public meeting. That's what he
Oh yeah,
said.
yeah.
So you might have seen that email to me. It was very brief, but it's important that he knows that, we went by the books, because I honestly, I think that conflict of interest is a little back to that. It's
It's
a little gray, but I know they don't want to mess with it.
yeah.
So
When you have a 3-member board, it's hard. Like technically 2 of us, and that you can't really have a conversation.
right,
And that's
right,
what gets tricky. And that was the thing with John, where it's like, him and I are going to have to work together with facilities and as it relates to parks, but it's like technically we're not really supposed, like, any discussion about parks could be a deliberation. So that
yeah.
could
I was
become
always
tricky,
under the
especially after
impression that,
July 1 when this all gets changed over.
yeah, I had thought that it was you couldn't make any decisions. I thought you could have a conversation just to, say, hey, I have this idea, but we won't, we'll talk about it more, but to be able to kind of, I mean, it seems like it's pretty limiting not to be able to have an open conversation as parks commissioners if I happen to see you. And of course, if you go by the books, you're saying, but I was always under the impression that we could not make any decisions outside of the open meeting, the public meeting.
Yeah,
So,
I think it's
um,
deliberation. Like we can't discuss, so like we couldn't sit down and discuss a policy
yeah,
because
yeah, that
that's
makes
something that
sense.
the
I mean,
public
I
should
get
have
it.
a right to.
Yeah,
But to
and
just
I
like
understand, it'd be easy to say, well, nobody ever, participates in the parks meetings, but I understand that we're going to stick with what's expected of everybody. We're no different. It's important to me that, and we're doing that. We always do that. But,
yeah,
but anyways, I just wanted him to be clear that this was all discussed in an open meeting. So just to
yeah, I'm
follow up
gonna
with him
reply.
and
Just
make him,
let them know what we came up with.
okay, sounds good.
All right, so I guess that's it, and
All
then
right.
I'll
Okay, Jeff.
follow up.
All
All
right.
right, take care.
All right. Yeah, thanks. Take care. Yep. Bye.
Bye.